Hello everyone, my name is Cian Hoyne, voice actor and actor, here today to talk to you about voice acting. Do you think you want to become a voice actor? Do you think you have what it takes? Do you have no idea on where to start? Then this video might be for you. Disclaimer, I can only speak about my own personal experience. My advice may not be similar to other people's advice. The advice that helped me might not help you. It's just about taking what helps and leaving what doesn't. A good rule of thumb for learning any new skill. I can only speak on the experiences I've had as an independent voice actor in my early days of this career, to my time in professional training at college and university, and I can speak about my professional experience in the booth with seasoned professionals as well. I'm speaking from about 5 years of experience in the professional realm, but that experience extends beyond that to my very early days where I had no clue of what I was doing, from very, very humble beginnings from recording in my room. Very important, take what you want, take what helps, leave what doesn't. I'm going to preface this as well. I'm going to be consulting my notes on my screen here, so if you see me looking down, it's because I've written a lot of things out to try and help out with this video. Part 1. Inspiration and practice. Chances are, if you are watching this video, that you have the feeling that you might have something in your briefcase of skills that will lend itself to voice acting. Whether you have a very well-spoken, clear, concise reading voice that might be suitable for commercials or audiobooks, or you can do a bunch of different character voices, lots of silly voices, that might lend itself to interactive media, video games, visual novels, things like that. And audiobooks as well applies in that category. There's an important distinction to be made here. It is what you are good at and what you can improve on. Knowing that before going into this is a huge help. For those of you who are self-conscious about doing voices, about performing, about throwing yourself into this very wacky world, fear not. You can develop a nice, good ability at anything, almost anything, by doing practice and learning a bit of technique along the way. Practice and improvement are huge keystones for getting good at anything, but in particular anything in the performing arts, and in this case voice acting. Practice and improvement should be a part of your skill set or a part of your life, your world, well before you've decided to get into this. And chances are, if you're doing the work to try and research this, then chances are that you are doing that as well. You should be doing your practice and your improvement long before you get behind a mic. By this I mean, do your silly voices often, you read your story out loud often, you sing, you warm up, you hum. Hum is a huge skill for actors, voice actors, getting really comfortable with your voice and being comfortable in pushing it gradually and gently. For me, my practice and technique was largely developed from playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends all through my teen years and through my adulthood to this day. If I needed to practice my orc voices, for example, real gruff, dark, rrrr kind of voices, well, my players in my game would encounter a bunch of very talkative orcs in their game, and I'd be forced to do that orc voice over and over and over again. Before me practicing in this way, I couldn't do orc voices. And now you can hear it featured on my demo reel. Practice, technique, it really goes a long way. That too, finding a fun way to practice your voices, practice your technique in a way that suits you, really allows you to grow. And that's what Dungeons and Dragons did for me. Another boon of doing it that way was I had a small audience, my friends, who would basically critique my voices throughout it. They would tell me if the voice was good, if it wasn't good, or, most importantly, if it was better than the last time I did it. Important thing to know early on, as with anything that you're learning for the first time, you are probably going to suck at it early on. Or at least there's going to be huge gaps in your knowledge about it. Your ability and skill and talent will only grow and shine through based on your ability to see through that rough patch of not knowing what you're doing first. So 1, knowing your voice starting out. 2, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. 3, practicing often and without embarrassment, or even with embarrassment if you can't. If you can't do it without the embarrassment, do it while embarrassed anyway. A good rule of thumb that my acting teachers told us in college was, you haven't had a good day unless you've embarrassed yourself at least 10 times. 4, stay the course. You will see results if you stick with it. Part 2. Mic equipment, environment, and technique. If you're starting out in anything, a good rule of thumb is not to blow a huge amount of money on the thing that you're trying out early on in case it isn't for you. And luckily, voiceover tech, microphones and accessories can be bought for insanely cheap. And also they are incredibly user-friendly. If you want to be a voice actor, you've got to get a mic. One of these guys. After a number of years, I've collected a couple of different mics of different price ranges and different user interfaces, and they all have their pros and cons. Without getting too far into the technical aspect of it, many parts of it I don't even know myself. You can get a mic as cheap as €25 in the case of me being in Ireland, that are simple USB plug and record kind of mics. You can set your own mic budget and do your own mic research as well. Find a mic that suits you. The mic I'm recording with right now is the Samson CO1 condenser studio mic, which back in the day it was quite reasonably priced, and it was actually my first ever mic that I got for my 16th birthday when I first decided to start getting into this. It has helped me all the way through the years and proves itself a reliable piece of kit for my toolset. It was just a complex enough mic that, as someone who had absolutely no knowledge about mics, software, anything like that had a bit of a learning curve. I had to learn about XLR mics, how to mount it, phantom power supplies, and it was just professional enough quality that I could produce things in my own room to a passable degree, and later on go on to audition for big projects with good enough condition that my agent wasn't shooting me down for having a dodgy ass mic. In this day and age of incredible price barrier for entry, you will quickly find, particularly in the YouTube, TikTok kind of scene, that most often any mic is good enough to record on. But it's how you record that is the important part. And that brings us to our environment. Whenever you see voice actors performing, they are in these cozy little booths full of padding and acoustic foam and little partition screens. That is the home of the voice actor, the recording booth. And you will often, unfortunately, rarely find yourself in that situation, particularly starting out anyway. You're going to be recording in your room, in your shed, wherever you find the space to record. Now again, you could spend a huge amount of money acoustically treating your space, or you can do what most actors do, which is improvise. You're going to go back to your childhood and you're going to get really proficient at building pillow and blanket forts. I know so many professional big-time voice actors in Ireland who record this way at home. You're going to wrap your mic in pillows and cover your head in a blanket, and that's going to be your booth. It's silly, it's kind of ridiculous, but time and time again, it proves itself incredibly effective. Now, other options for sound isolation do exist. For example, you can get one of these guys. This is a little sound isolation dome that just wraps around the mic, and you've got a little kind of sound isolation dome there for you that's doing the job that pillows would do. It suits my space more. You can just find what suits you, what suits your needs, but I'm always of the rule of thumb that go into this spending as little money as possible until you enjoy it. Along with your mic, you will need something to make sure that your own voice and technique isn't interfering with the actual recording of your voice. That's where a pop filter comes in. I'm being a bit of a bad boy and not using a pop filter right now on this guy. It's basically just a little barrier that is in the front of your mic that stops you from blowing out your mic through all of your plosive sounds that you're using with your mouth. Things like B's, P's, T's, chuz, anything, or even just breathing into the mic. You'll quickly find that those sounds are impossible to recover in editing. And the last thing you want to do is do a whole bunch of recording and realize that a lot of what you're saying is unintelligible because your mic has been blown out so many times. Now, these are incredibly cheap online. You can get them for $5, and oftentimes they are included in mic packages that you'll see online as well. Chances are when you're buying a mic, it's going to suggest to you a pop filter as well. And when in doubt, putting a sock over your mic does a good job in a pinch. So we've got your mic, got your padding, and we've got your pop filter as well. You'll now need software to record on. If you're lucky to have access to a PC or a laptop, then your wealth of resources and tools are endless. And if not, you'd be surprised about the power of your phone's own voice recording software, or whatever's on the app store for your respective phone. I've done a bunch of auditions, I've done a bunch of kind of sample recordings on my phone if I didn't have access to my equipment here at home. It's really kind of impressive. I've used a bunch of different softwares, but the one I started off with and the one that I use the most is a free software called Audacity. Chances are, if you are looking up videos about voice acting or how to get into it, most people are going to suggest this software, and there's a really good reason as to why. It is incredibly powerful if you learn how to use it, and I do recommend doing your research and learning how to use the software that you choose. Now, I also use Adobe Audition for kind of beefier projects, so if I need something very tightly optimized, Adobe Audition tends to help out with that, but the one I always go back to is Audacity. It's the one I know the most about. I've spent so much time learning how to do it because I didn't want to spend a big amount of money in my early days learning how to use it. I watched videos, I read guides, I experimented, trial and error on the actual software, opened it up, had no idea what I was doing, and just experimented around. And sure enough, over a weekend, I got pretty damn proficient at the software, and now use it all the time. The point is to not learn how to be a sound engineer, although that's an incredibly useful skill. If you do want to invest that time into it, I'm very interested in sound and how to capture sound and things like that. So I was a bit more interested in delving a little bit deeper into it. But if you're only interested in recording your own voice, you only need to learn up to that kind of ladder where you're able to certainly start recording on your own and producing it to a degree that is passable or suitable for whatever you're doing it for. A good software that suits you is a must. And finally, it's technique. Now, I can make 100 videos going over all of the techniques, skills that I've learned over the years. But if I just gave you a list of skills and things you should do or you shouldn't do, that tends to ward people off away from the fun of actually doing it and throwing yourself into the deep end. And most of it is learning while doing. You will learn on the go, and through practice, trial and error, you'll develop your ability. There are no set rules or dictum about how you should record, how you should do this, how you should do that. But there is recording etiquette of sorts. Ultimately, as long as the thing you are recording, either for yourself or for someone who has commissioned you or is paying you, is recorded well, then it doesn't really matter how you got there. Having fun is ultimately the only rule. That being said, there are a couple of things that are always good to have in the back pocket that might help you out for your recording, and you'll probably keep with you for your entire lifetime of recording. I know I certainly do. As mentioned, having a good environment to record is paramount to getting anything done. No loud noises, windows open, background noise. If you have dogs like I do, they can be a real problem barking during your recording. You'll quickly find your recording sessions go from a quick 20-minute job to an hour-long job. Make sure that your chair isn't creaky. Mine's incredibly creaky right now, and make sure you're not wearing any noisy clothes, jewelry, or anything that might rattle away and ruin your recording. You'll have your pillows, your blankets, your isolation there to also help mitigate all these kind of outside factors. You'll have a pop filter of some sort to make sure that the sounds of your own voice aren't interfering with your own recording. And a good rule of thumb is the pinky to thumb rule. You're just keeping the mic a pinky and thumb distance away, roughly from your chin to the mic. What that does, that keeps your general audio levels to a similar enough degree that you can later go in and manipulate and edit. And it also allows you to play a little bit with volume. You can go a little bit louder. And if you're going a bit softer, you can move a little bit more into the mic. A very important rule, and I got caught with this quite a few times when I was starting out, was software manipulation does not make the actor and does not make the voice actor. Too often I see voice actors, particularly on TikTok, who are discussing all this technique that they're doing for characters. They're given a character, they're deciding what voice to do for that character, and they really elegantly explain how they're manipulating their voice, their physicality, to allow for that voice to happen. And then at the end result, they cover it up with a bunch of filters and pitch shifts and things like that. It completely takes you away from the performance, it completely takes you away from the actor, and ultimately you don't know what that person's voice sounds like, or if their performance was any good. This comes down to a sometimes rule: the voice actor does not create the filter for their voice. That is a job left for the sound engineers. Your job is just to create the character voice and allow the producers and sound engineers to elevate it in whatever way they need to. That is their craft. Don't take their job away from them. Ultimately, do not hide your voice from the person that you are sending the voice recording to, or from yourself. How will you know if your technique's any good if you're covering it up with a bunch of different filters? Obviously, characters will need filters and voices and editing to your tonality, but try and stay away from it from the beginning, because otherwise you're not really going to develop any new skill. You're just going to be comfortable in allowing the computer to do all the work. Part 3. Creating a demo reel. The single most powerful advertising tool for a voice actor is their demo reel. This is your showcase of all of your vocal range, not necessarily all of your characters, because many of you will be able to do lots of different voices, and unfortunately, not all of them are going to make the cut. So this showcase, either for a commercial reel or for an interactive media reel, is going to demonstrate your best. The voices you love doing and the voices you can do very well and consistently. You're going to condense this into a audio recording of, you try to stay no longer than 1.5 minutes, but obviously this varies between what you're doing. I know my demo reel right now is a little bit longer than 2 or 3 minutes, which I do really need to edit and get that sorted. However, be careful with a longer demo reel, because the longer that it is, the higher the demand is, or the need is, to keep it interesting. Usually producers, even viewers on YouTube or anything like that, they rarely listen beyond the 45-second mark. You want to include your best voices, flashing between these different voices. You want to get about 8 to 10 in that reel. And variation is incredibly important. You want to spread out your possibilities to cut to the brass tacks. Make sure that you are spreading out your possibilities amongst all the different possible jobs you can get. I do recommend, for a demo reel that you're planning to submit to a professional agency or anything like that, that you do get it professionally recorded in a studio. However, that is a pretty price to pay. And if you're starting out, it's not hugely important to have a Studio One made just yet. My first reel, I recorded in my bedroom, and granted, I cringe at it when I hear it now. It is in no way close to the quality that a studio demo reel will get you, but it did get my foot in the door. Certainly in the online recording scene anyway, and later on developed into getting my first professional job. Enough so that then I could afford the studio visit. You can write the script yourself, like I did at the beginning, but you quickly find, especially if you're not a very good writer, like I wasn't at the time, that condensing a character or multiple characters into a phrase or a line across many, many different characters, it's pretty difficult to do, and still showcase all that you can do with your voice. A piece of advice I heard, and I can't quite remember where I heard it, it was on a video on YouTube anyway somewhere, was that pull from games, from comics, from TV shows, because they often have short, snappy phrases that really highlight the character that they're written for. And they've gone through the entire process of going through the writer's room, producers, to the actors then themselves. But that brings us to an incredibly important thing about voice acting. In fact, it's a deadly killer of voice actors: the impressionist. Impressionists and voice actors are two very different fields, very different careers, very different performers. There is an overlap, obviously, between impressionism and voice acting. But going into this career, impressions are going to kill you fairly early on. Keep impressions for the moment as far away from you as possible, particularly your demo. And this is only in my opinion. Some people will disagree. Impressions helped other people out as well. But me going into this, the advice I was hearing was, don't do impressions. Use that vocal technique and your range from that impression to inform your own portrayal of these characters. But you need to be careful about putting someone like Mickey Mouse or Elmo on your demo reel, because chances are you're not going to be cast as Elmo or Mickey Mouse. Now, you can find my demo reel as an example on this channel, and you might even recognize some of the lines that I do in that demo reel. And some of them might be using similar tonalities as those characters, but staying away from being a direct portrayal or impression of someone else's performance. One is not just only a respect thing, but it's also illustrating you have your own technique. And being able to say 5 phrases as Mickey Mouse does not mean you're able to hold a Mickey Mouse voice for the entirety of a project. It's important you find your own creative identity and ability in your own voice acting technique and livelihood. Now, much love to all the impressionists out there, and I can do a few impressions myself. It's nothing against impressionists. This is just about identity and integrity and developing an authentic craft in voice acting. After recording your demo reel, after using your knowledge of technique and environment, you then bring it into a software. And in that software, you've taken the time to learn that software, and you manipulate your audio, clean it, boost it, whatever you need to do. You then will have all the tools necessary to kick off your career. That brings us to part 4, the career. I won't spend too much time talking about the actual industry of voice acting, particularly because I live in Ireland and our scene is very different to any other scene, and each country will have their own scene as well. Instead, I'll look at the broader strokes of it. Now that you have a reel, you can now begin to put yourself out there. Get involved in forums, groups, online communities to get into the field. CC Casting Club, I don't know if they still operate under that name, was a huge boon for me getting involved in the industry when I first started out. It got me involved in a bridge series. It allowed me to meet lots of very cool people who would give me their advice and I'd give them my advice. We had our own skill set and things we were good at and not good at. We'd help each other out. I got a few paid gigs from them, and it's a great community to really start out on. And sometimes they put some pretty high profile jobs out there, and I know they're doing a huge amount of classes and stuff with really top-notch voice actors. And then you can research into things like agencies when you've got a bit more experience under your belt, either online worldwide agencies that will represent you regardless of where you are, or agencies in your own country or your own county or wherever you are. Many agencies are free submission. You just send them your demo reel and they'll get in touch with you back, and others are recruitment only. You can also see what agencies do and what their clients have done and what the agency has got them for work, and see what they're doing that you might also want to do. I do suggest, though, only applying to agencies when you do have that studio-made demo reel, and maybe a few credits under your belt as well. You'll find quickly in the creative industry, your first impression might well be your last impression. And the number one rule as a creative, as an actor, as a voice actor, create, create, create. It's an often lonely job as an actor and voice actor, and jobs will not be given to you on a silver platter. You must create and make your own mark in the industry that then other creatives can meet you in the middle on. So create, create, create. I was always so self-conscious about putting myself out there, more so once I started getting into the industry than when I was first starting out. And the biggest cure to that anxiety, to that inferiority complex, was creating, creating, creating. Work, work, work. Practice, practice, practice. Always endeavor to do better than you did yesterday, and always have fun with it. Fun, fun, fun. I hope this helped. Good luck out there, voice actors, and let me know what you get up to. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I hope it was in any way helpful to any of you. As with anything, take what you think will help you and leave what doesn't. That's a piece of advice for anything you're researching on. No one person will have all the information you need, and what works for someone might not work for you. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm sure I'll be back with more voice acting videos in the future, and let me know if you want to see any other voice acting videos. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, all the best. Cheers.